everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video, Core Pick live stream for today, Wednesday, June 21st. It's a 7-game main slate in total over on FanDuel. Mainly focused on FanDuel just in general. If you're playing for whatever reason on DraftKings, it is a 6-game slate. There is not the Braves and Philadelphia Phillies game on there. So that is something to note. But, primarily focused on the FanDuel side on this video. But some of the information still can apply to both sites as well. But without further ado, we'll get started with a recap of yesterday's picks. If you are joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. What I typically do is go through a recap of yesterday's picks, go through a little bit of weather report for today's games for the main slate, then go over to FanDuel, talk about my core picks, 1 pitcher, 4 hitters, looking at some past history, some recent history, especially from the matchup perspective, hitter versus pitcher. And then last but not least, going over to the cheat sheet, the bottom half of it, and talking about my top GPP teams to stack for the day overall. That cheat sheet is 100% free. It is up on Facebook. It's up on Twitter. It's up on the YouTube community tab. So definitely be sure to check that out as you're building your lineups app. If you're looking for a little bit more in-depth notes on the slate for any given day, Monday through Friday, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Coach Greg Sports as well. But with that being said, we'll get started with a recap of yesterday's picks. So a pitcher, we had Garrett Cole. He was $10,600. He ended up with 53 points. He was a hit and the second overall pitcher on yesterday's slate. The only pitcher that did finish ahead of him was Framber Valdez by about 3 points. So a very good play there. Pretty safe play as well. But then we get down to, originally I had first baseman Matt Carpenter there at $2,600. Had some pretty good history in the past versus Anthony Descalfani, but did not end up starting. I said you could go to Jose Abreu or kind of your favorite cheap option in that position. So Abreu had really good history in the past versus Justin Verlander. Only ended up with 3 points yesterday at $2,800. So to give him a push, it was kind of between him, Wilson Ramos, Joey Votto, kind of in that group. If you went with not Wilson Ramos, Wilson Contreras, excuse me. If you went with Contreras, who was 2 for 2 versus Mackenzie Gore in the past, he had a really good day. The other two, not so much, but hopefully you guys get to a little bit of Contreras in that spot. Then at second base, we had Nico Horner, $3,400, got 12.2 points. He was a hit, and he ended up being the 5th overall second baseman yesterday. Some pretty good stats for second baseman yesterday, actually. And then for our outfielders, we had Ian Happ, got to 15.2 points at $3,100, so he was a hit as well. And then last but not least, we had Juan Soto once again at $3,500, got to 15.5 points, so he was a hit. So 4 out of 5 in terms of hits. The one push in Jose Abreu, if you got to Wilson Contreras in that spot instead, would have been 5 for 5 in terms of hits. But with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing this screen. We're going to get over to RotoWire, talk a little bit about the weather spots for today, which doesn't look to be anything major at this point in time. So just getting this all pulled up here now as we're talking. It looks like we're lagging just a little bit today, so I do apologize for that. But in terms of the weather spot, the only real game that we have for that weather spot is the Atlanta Braves and Philadelphia Phillies game. 34% chance of rain, so maybe a little bit of rain in this game, but nothing too major at this point in time. So not really too concerned about that. If anything does change throughout the day, we'll leave it down in the comments, as well as the starting lineups as they do come out throughout the day. So we're going to get off this screen real quick. We'll go over to FanDuel and talk about those core picks for today overall. So once again, like I did mention, we're going to talk about 1 pitcher and 4 hitters. So these are guys that have decent history in the past in their respective matchups and, relatively decent history in the recent games as well. So we're going to start off at that pitcher position with Luis Castillo. He is $10,600. Another pay up option today. I think there's some interesting options in terms of pitching today. If you don't want to play Luis Castillo, obviously Shohei Ohtani is at the top as well. Yu Darvish has some upside going against the Giants. And then a couple pay down options that look pretty decent in Paul Blackburn and potentially Garrett Whitlock today. So a lot of different options that we could approach, but those are going to be the 5 pitchers I'm mainly targeting on today's slate overall. But in terms of Luis Castillo, got pretty good history versus the New York Yankees in his career. He had 3 starts versus them last year, 49, 45, and 46 points. So some pretty good history there. 2.73 ERA on the season, 4 wins, averaging about 37 points per game. So a pretty safe option today as well. Looking at some of these recent game logs, they've been doing pretty well throughout the season. We've only had, 1 start of 21. That's been his lowest on the season. I guess there's 118 in there too as well. I do apologize for that. So, you don't really have too much downside with a guy like Luis Castillo. Obviously, any pitcher could go wrong on any given day, but the upside is still very high and looks like one of the safer pitchers to play on today's slate overall. Then we're going to keep moving down to the hitters. So we have Austin Riley here. He's $3,000, averaging about 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He has a long history versus Aaron Nola. He's 20 for 45 with 5 home runs versus Aaron Nola in his career. 2 of those home runs coming in 2023 in the game earlier this season when we're against Aaron Nola. So definitely like the upside that Austin Riley has in general. Looking at his stats for like the season and some recent history, 259 average, 12 home runs, 35 RBIs. Like I said, averaging almost 10 fantasy points per game at $3,000. Obviously, had a home run yesterday. Some decent history here. There's a little bit of a swing or miss there. I believe one of the games last week when we did have him as a core play was one of the games he went over, unfortunately. But that history versus Nola, definitely something I'm betting on once again today. And, Aaron Nola really hasn't been that great so far this season. So we're going to close out Austin Riley. We're going to go to another guy that has really good history in his respective matchup in Xander Bogaerts, averaging just over 9.5 fantasy points per game on the season, $3,000. Down to 260 average, 7 home runs, 24 RBIs. Had a strong start to the season, but been battled some injuries. Seems to be all right at this point in time, though. And he is 6 for 12 with 1 home run versus Sean Manaea, who is expected to be the primary pitcher for the San Francisco Giants today. Looks like Ryan Walker will probably be the opener once again, and then Manaea will follow him. So bulk of it's going to come against Manaea, so that should favor Xander Bogaerts in general. Do like that Padres stack quite a bit today. And even if you look at some of these recent games, there's a lot of like threes in here, but some decent upside to be had at that as well with these double-digit performances. So guy that has a pretty safe floor overall for today. And then we're going to keep on moving down with another Atlanta Brave in the outfield and Marcell Ozuna, another guy who does have a lot of history versus Aaron Nola as well. 12 for 43, 4 home runs versus Aaron Nola, and one of them coming in this season in 2023. On the season, Marcell Ozuna is at a 241 average, 13 home runs, 30 RBIs, averaging almost 10 fantasy points per game at $3,000. So a pretty similar story to Austin Riley, who we already talked about. Ozuna had that really slow start to the beginning of the year, but really turned it on since then. So definitely do like him at this point in time. Looking at some of these recent games, you're going to have a lot of that swing and miss upside with Marcell Ozuna, but on the days it goes right, it's going to go really right and have some pretty high upside in general. So I do like him at $3,000, especially given that matchup in history versus Aaron Nola. Then last but not least, we're going with Trent Grisham here. So another Padres hitter, guy that hasn't hit the greatest so far this season. He's below that famous Mendoza line of 200. So 197, 6 home runs, 17 RBIs, averaging about 7.5 fantasy points per game on the season. Only $2,600, so a relatively cheap play at that. I do like the Padres stack quite a bit today. He's 3 for 5 versus Sean Manaea in his career. I believe 1 for 2 versus him this season. So definitely do like that, a little bit of history there. If you want to switch this pick out to Juan Soto, definitely feel free to do so. Probably going to play a lot of Juan Soto today myself, but I figured since I had him in the core picks 2 straight days, probably want to do it the 3rd straight day, even though he does make a lot of sense and he's down to $3,200. Somehow he's $300 cheaper than the past 2 days when he was one of the best outfielders 2 days ago and a solid outfielder yesterday at 15.5 points. But with that being said, we're going to look at some of these recent games for Trent Grisham as well. And I believe he was 2 for 4 yesterday, if I remember correctly. So we're looking here 2 for 4 yesterday. He's got a hit in 3 out of the last 4 games, has a little bit of upside versus Sean Manaea. So nothing that I would be too concerned about at this point in time. But with that being said, if you go with these 5 players that I do have listed here, you will have $12,800 remaining, $3,200 per player. So a good chunk of change is remaining, no matter which way you want to build out your lineup. If you want to pay up for a couple of guys, definitely makes some sense. Or if you want to take a little bit more balanced approach, kind of feels like a balanced approach type of day with Luis Castillo in there. But if you're playing some of the cheaper pitcher options at one point or another, probably can afford to pay up for some other options there. I will say one note for the Padres, which is a team that I do like quite a bit today. Fernando Tatis in his career is 0 for 9 for Sean Manaea, so that's something a little bit interesting, but that could change on any given day as well. But with that being said, we're going to stop sharing that screen. We're going to go over to the YouTube community tab, take a look at that cheat sheet and the top GPP teams to stack for today overall. So just waiting for this to load up here. And we have the Atlanta Braves. Imagine that, 2 of those guys in my core picks. The Atlanta Braves have really good history versus Aaron Nola in the past, whether it is Marcell Ozuna, Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna does as well, but he's a little bit more expensive. So if you're playing him, probably playing one of those cheaper pitchers on today's slate or paying down at a couple other different positions. And then even Kevin Pillar is 3 for 9 versus him as well if he does end up in the starting lineup. Chicago White Sox, really good history in the past versus Martin Perez, whether it's Jake Burr, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, Tim Anderson, if he ends up playing. He's $2,500, but he's dealing with that shoulder injury. Elvis Andrus has good history versus him as well, as Monty Grandal. And then you got Andrew Vaughn, who typically it's left-handed pitching pretty well. So the White Sox look like a pretty strong stack just in general today. And then we have the Angels going against Michael Grove of the Dodgers. No history there in the past, but Angels lineup is pretty solid. Michael Grove's got an ERA of like 8 at this point in time. So do like the opportunities to be presented there. Last time that Grove pitched, they did start with an opener. So we'll see if that's going to end up being the case ultimately today or not as well. And then last but not least, the Padres going against Sean Manaea. Opener will be Ryan Walker, but followed by Sean Manaea. A lot of these guys have pretty good history for Sean Manaea, whether it's Xander Bogaerts, Trent Grisham, Juan Soto, who I did mention, 0-for-1 versus him in his career, but very small sample size. I believe he's got like a pop-up and a walk versus him when I was doing some of that digging in the history terms. Like I said, the only guy that doesn't really have that great a history versus him is Fernando Tatis, but he's also liable to hit a home run on any given slate as well. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I do have at this point in time in terms of MLB DFS core picks, top stacks, weather report, and the recap from yesterday. If you guys do have any additional questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also, be sure to let me know your favorite play on today's slate. Definitely interested in hearing who it is, whether it's someone from my core picks, whether it's someone from my cheat sheet, whether it's someone from my top stacks, or whether it's a completely different player you guys think I missed. And then, as always, we'll be listing any weather updates throughout the day, as well as the starting lineups down in the comments. So definitely make sure you're checking out as we do get closer to lock, just in case anything changes. If anything majorly changes to the core picks, we'll leave a pinned comment down there as well. But with that being said, if you're checking my channel out for the very first time or have yet to subscribe, find the information that I'm putting out useful as you're building out your DFS lineups. Definitely be sure to subscribe. It means a lot to me, helps support the channel, helps build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it is MLB DFS as well as USFL DFS. USFL DFS video for the playoffs will be out on Friday, so definitely be sure to check that out if that's something you're into as well. And then with that being said, if you're a new or current subscriber who has yet to do so, also be sure to hit that notification bell down below. It'll let you know every single time I post up a live stream, post up a pre-recorded video, or anything else like that. And then with that being said, definitely appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day, whether you're watching live or on replay to check out this video. Definitely means a lot to me. Hopefully each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.